Absolutely fabulous.
We've also got Paul Bennett Air Shows. They've got their trailer here with all the caps and shirts and hats. They're a great supporter of the air show down here with Mark Bright and Kerry. So they'll be performing a little bit later on, both individually and in formation, plus the Warbirds are brought down. Absolutely fabulous. Now you see that beautiful Connie turning around there up against the escarpment, flown today by Ross Kelly. This is the flagship of the HARS fleet down here at Albion Park, and it is one of the foundation aircraft of the fleet. Beautifully maintained. That is one of the most magnificent aircraft I think that's ever been built.
There's certainly something to be said for those 1950s lines, isn't there? It's a design, a classic design that you don't see these days. I mean, there's always something impressive, isn't there, Ando, about the modern aircraft and how they look, but there's really just something to be said for the design of aircraft of that era, particularly that one.
Well, when you look at it, this aircraft was actually first flown in 1943, and they used it as a military transport through the Second World War, using these huge 3,400 Curtiss-Wright R-3350s. 3,350 cubic inches each one.
That's about 55 litres of sheer horse power.
Aircraft was actually designed to meet a transcontinental and Western Airlines requirement that started in 1939. So you can imagine the advanced thinking that was taking place then. Well,
If you look at what was happening in the UK, the airliners at the time were still basically very small. They were of wooden construction. The majority of them were still fabric as well, but this was what they were thinking about in the United States. If you have a look at that wing design, very, very smooth, and it is very close to that of another Lockheed product, the P-38 Lightning fighter.
That's right, mate. Gave it some amazing performance. They had a bit of a reputation for being cantankerous on the maintenance side, with requiring quite a bit of attention on those engines. They were very complex. Like I said, it's 55 litres per engine. There's 18 cylinders, and each engine has an internal supercharger and 3 external power recovery turbines. So there's a lot going on in that engine bay, and there's 4 engine bays. So as you could imagine, there's a lot that could potentially go wrong. But when they were kept in good condition, they worked wonderfully and carried quite a bit of people around the world. They'd carry between 65 to 90 passengers, and typically they had first class down the back, away from the noise of the engines.
It's often been joked with the complexity of these engines. They said that this was the best 3-engined airliner that Qantas ever operated because they had spares everywhere. But when you look at it, a turbo compound engine where you're using the exhaust gases to not only supercharge, but you're turbocharging, and the power goes back into the engine itself rather than into the air, like you'd have on a normal supercharger.
When we talk about keeping it in good condition, we might just have another listen to it flying by, and then we'll talk about some of this aircraft's history. Quite interesting.
That beautiful dolphin-shaped fuselage.
And the triple tails started to fit in most hangars at the time.
Now, it's hard to believe that this aircraft was actually put away in storage for many, many years. It was rescued from the boneyard, rescued from the desert. After doing a lot of work, it's been built in 1955. Actually, it was formerly a United States Air Force designated as C-121C. Hard to believe that, there's so many aircraft sitting in the desert over there, but gee whiz. It'd be nice to keep this one flying. Be glad to see that flying around these days.
2 of these aircraft are currently flying. We have this particular machine and its sister ship, which is flying with the Super Constellation Flyers Association, sponsored by Breitling in Europe.
That's right, it's in Switzerland.
Coming in again from your left, look at that magnificent shape. Listen to the sound of those engines. As you mentioned there earlier on, originally delivered to the United States Air Force. Look at that beautiful curved approach there that Ross is using to bring the aircraft. That is just a classic shape for any of you who have not seen the Connie flying before. Marvellous aircraft, beautifully maintained by the guys down here, or the guys and gals at HARS here at Albion Park. Lights on. It's amazing to see this aircraft if you ever see a dusk display, because the exhaust there is a certain amount of unburnt fuel that is still coming out of those exhausts. You've got these huge flames. It looks like it's on fire, but it's not. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful sight at dusk.
It's like a whole lot of little afterburners. Sound, that aircraft. And here's a little piece of history. I'm told that all Wright, the famous Wright brothers, Orville Wright, the first person to fly, he had his last ever flight as a passenger at a Constellation, and he commented that its wingspan was actually longer than the distance of his first flight.
Look at these still camera guys, they're always noisy. Alright?
Yeah, of course, we love bloody movie makers, you know, when they've got sound on.